Thank you for that, gents. Now, we've got time for a little bit of a debate, which I wanted to bring in while we have this sort of off-season. And I know you've both probably got some very strong views on this, and we have already teased... Bit far, come on. We've teased the fact, haven't we, that we thought we'd have a little chat about Moto-E, the all-electric class of motorcycle racing, which has been going since 2019, supporting MotoGP at selected races. And the reason I wanted to bring this up was, A, I know Keith has some strong views, and B, as someone who personally enjoys and is quite fascinated by sort of the future of motorsport and how that relates to what we're seeing on our roads and the entertainment factor amongst it all, I felt like it was worth a discussion, because unlike some of the electric racing series which I watch, so Formula E, Extreme E as well, which is launched this year, Moto-E, to me, 100% just seems like a bit of an afterthought. The coverage isn't the same. It's generally not talked about as much from where I stand. But on the other hand, I think it's brilliant that Dorna have sort of created this World Cup to run alongside the main stage, because it's also so important that we have this focus on electric power in the motorbike world, because whether you like it or not, that is the way, surely, the world is going.
Dorna have been dead clever, because the E-Prix or whatever it is in your four-wheeled department, that split away. You know, they didn't keep hold of that in the Formula One circles, did they? And it split away, and so the potential has gone somewhere else. The marketing potential has gone somewhere else. Whereas Dorna have clamped down. They didn't give it a Grand Prix tag. They called it a World Cup, which again is smart. Very good thinking by Dorna. Got a lot of time for these Spanish guys. They kind of work it out fairly well. Now, Moto-E, for me, is too early. But given what I've just said, it needed to be too early, because otherwise they would have let someone else have that championship chance. And therefore, in the future, as you're talking quite rightly, Harry, we are going to be on alternative fuels at some stage in the future. Hopefully after I'm dead, because it just drives me insane. But the point being is that we will be on alternative fuels. And so therefore, Dorna, MotoGP will eventually be an electric series, or whatever the fuel is at the time, because that's where we're going. Fossil fuels, like me, are a thing of the past. You know, it's something that the word fossil and Huewen go together quite well, don't they, in a minute? You youngsters on the other side of the screen. But the point being is that why I say it's a bit soon, as in on track, whereas it's not too soon politically, because they've got to clamp that down, where it's too soon on track is that I still believe 100% that we are not there yet. The bloody thing, the bikes are, they're not horrible, but they're very close to being horrible. They're too heavy. The performances of them go after 5 or 6 or 7 laps, depending on the track. You've got no distance attached to any kind of a race. They're not a nice thing to ride particularly, although some people have managed to get around it quite well. And then you've got the environmental bit of it, which I think is a massive con. I just think that the electric vehicles are still a massive con, because we're not yet into that. For sure, if you're driving an electric vehicle, it's putting out no emissions. Now, I think that's a great thing. If you live in a city and your kids live in a city and you don't want to pollute their lungs and all the rest of it. So yes, massively pro something that doesn't emit the kind of poisons that a normal combustion engine do. But then again, at the end of the day, when you build those batteries, you're raping a country's resources somewhere to make the batteries. You're transporting them around the world using up loads of carbon miles. You're then fitting them in your vehicle, which that little bit of it, if you just take that in isolation, is really, really efficient and really good for the environment. But then the other end of that is you've got a dirty, great battery, you know, like your good old phone that you've got to toss away at some stage and find a big hole where you can chuck all this rubbish back into. So environmentally, that's not so great as well. Then there's the situation where charging the things up, yeah, fine if you're in a nuclear kind of environment, or if you've got a windmill in your garden or something like that. But when you're burning a great big pile of coal down the road here to fuel your car, I don't believe that the sustainability is taken as an overall package. This is only my opinion. I am no scientist, but it doesn't seem to be that we're getting the whole picture. We're not being given the whole picture. We've got this lovely little point that we're looking at, which is the environmentally wonderful car when the Prius goes by whispering along and the birds are singing and everybody's happy and the flowers are growing. But the fact is the front end of that is the minerals and the stuff you need to make the batteries, and then the back end of that is dumping all the rubbish after it's finished and you replace it with another battery. Why didn't we go hydrogen? Why don't we go to hydrogen? Why didn't
not
that
ready
happen?
yet, I don't think. But I would argue that would be the logical next phase. I personally think electric is the future. I think electric is what's going to get us to the next stage, which is probably hydrogen. But, picking up on what Keith said there, Pete, these bikes are so much heavier as well. Just looking at the stats, they're over, 239 kilograms. A Moto2 bike is 134 kg. MotoGP is 157, and then the races, they're short races as well. So unlike in the other racing series, in the four-wheel world, which it's all about battery management and things like that, which directly has a translation into the road car world. MotoE, I get the point that perhaps it's too early, because also when you look at what's on the road, there aren't that many electric bikes on the road anyway, and if they are ridiculously expensive. But I think it's hard to disagree with what you're saying there, Keith, about how Dorna had to pounce early on this, because otherwise someone else was going to do it, and also it is the spark and the catalyst for creating this change and creating the awareness around more electric vehicle technology in the bike world. No, or am I spouting absolute rubbish there, Pete? I don't know.
No, exactly. I heard the same as Keith, which is Dorna realised they had to do this because someone else would otherwise. The other kind of secondary potential benefit that I heard from Dorna was that there's some sponsors that won't back fossil fuel sports, and the thought was that maybe by having an electric bike class, you'll bring those into the wider Grand Prix world. Whether that's actually happened, I'm not sure. But that was the other thing that I heard from Dorna as to why they wanted to do it. As far as the racing, the bikes, yeah, I agree with what you're saying. That the trouble is that it's pretty much a bit slower than Moto3. The bikes are a lot heavier than Moto3. The racing is kind of close like Moto3, but the races are a lot shorter as well. There's not really any positive. It needs something to be different in my mind. At the moment, it's just, it's almost trying to copy the established classes, and it's not as good as any of them. And it doesn't have anything of its own to kind of counteract that. I know they have this e-pole thing, but I'm not really a fan of that. That's something different. I mean, why don't they put lights on the, put like a light bar on the front that goes green when they hit the throttle and red when they put the brakes on, or something like that, so people watching, it's electric, or link it up with this e-sport thing and have a team or something. I don't know, but what they really
don't you like the beeper down the pit lane?
Yeah. What it needs to be is competition. I think that's I mean, just like in the early days of Grand Prix, you had the competition improving the internal combustion engines and everything else. They need some more brands in there. But I understand completely why they've made it a single bike. I mean, it would have just been so risky at the start. It would have just been battery races of whoever has the best battery wins, and that would have been it. So I understand why they've done it. But I think it started off as a bit of a curiosity. I think there was decent interest the first year. There were some big name riders as well. And, the bikes slide a bit. They're not bad to watch. But as I say, there's no noise. They're a bit slower than Moto3. There's nothing different now. And I think it needs to take that next step.
It'll come. I mean, I think my negativity really is over the environmental comments made, I think, with battery technology being still a bit behind. It's interesting that Gary Eckerold, son of Johnny Eckerold, the 350 world champion going back in the day, Gary Eckerold works for Williams on the electric side of things. And Gary is very pro regarding this, because he can probably see the future better than I can, or we can, if I might drag you two into it as well. But guys that are in it believe in it, and that gives me hope that we will get to where we need to be, which is lighter batteries that will last longer in the circumstances. I mean, as a racing spectacle at the minute, actually racing's been all right, but you wouldn't want one of the bloody things to fall on you because they weigh a ton. When they fall on their side, they go down and they don't flip, because they're so heavy, they just dig a great furrow in the ground. And when they catch fire, I have been witness to two of these things going up, and it is literally China syndrome stuff. It's going to burn to the core of the earth. The way that they have to deal with an accident, like in Formula E, like you were talking about your car racing stuff, they can't touch the things. They've all got bloody great big rubber gloves on. Can't go near it unless it's got a green light on it. Same thing with a bike. But when it's in the middle of a gravel trap, and nobody can pick it up, and it's on fire, And because those kind of battery fires self-ignite and self-feed, so you can't put it out with water. It doesn't work that way. So what they have to do is they have to drive up to it with looks like a little trailer, hook up a wire to it, cover it up with a big blanket, obviously a fireproof blanket, cover it up, and then drag it back into this trailer, shut the door, and seal it off. So it's got no oxygen in there. It's the only way they can deal with it. We haven't had one in a gravel trap yet. We had one that went bang in Austria, I think 2 years ago, in the paddock. The batteries overheated while they were being charged. And don't get me started on this because it's kind of slightly funny, really. Valencia, little story. Valencia, when they turned up, I remember next to the television compound was the World Cup of MotoE. And it looked really spectacular, really, really good, well laid out. And opposite the tent with this massive, great big awning thing with all of the bikes in, all the teams in, all the different colours and everything, because it's well sponsored and well looked at, were these like pump affairs that you pull the bike up and plug it in. It's the recharging facilities. But being the good old cynic that I've always been all my life, and hopefully that will never leave me, I followed the wiring for these things. So this dirty great cable that's about this size out the back of these recharging units. And if you go along behind the television compound, you come to massive, great smoke-belching diesel generators that are feeding them with the power to charge these batteries up. You know, it's just smoke and mirrors in some respects. There wasn't the power on site at a racetrack to be able to recharge these bikes. They had to bring these dirty, great big diesel generators in to be able to find enough power to recharge them in time. And have you ever seen one with its clothes off? Unbelievable. It looks like a fridge that goes underneath your cabinet at home. Yep. And by the way, we've been here before. Your fridge is 600 millimeters wide. That's the maximum width you can have a race bike. So it could actually be a fridge full of batteries as far as I'm aware.
We really have been there before, haven't we? It's interesting. I wanted to bring up the diesel generator thing. I have a feeling, I think that was in the first season. I think they have improved on that since, but that's because simply the tracks didn't have the capabilities to do that. But that's an argument as well that, you know, that's why we needed something like MotoE in the first place to create that change that was necessary to drive forward. You know, okay, we have to start with diesel generators, fine, but then, you know, we will rapidly try and beat the technology to then not have diesel generators, which I think they are able to do. So
rapid charging has come on miles in the 2 years since I was talking about that. That was at Valencia, the first time we ever saw them at the end of the year. So we're going back a fair bit with that. And granted, battery technology has moved on so unbelievably quickly over the last few years. I don't doubt for a second we'll get to where we get to in the end. And it may become the technology that will even, you know, get the approval of my house.
Well, and actually, both of you mentioned the idea of sound, and just we had a few comments on this as well from Twitter. Alan Clark saying, the question is, what will the next generation want to watch and pay for? What hooked me to the sport was the noise of a 500cc engine going under Dunlop Bridge at Donington. Those days, though, are coming to an end.
It's like everything else, isn't it? I mean, politics, what you can say, what you can do, the way that people treat each other, you know, everything is changing. And so it should in many, many ways. The fact that the whine of an electric bike doesn't really suit an old sod like me, because I love the scream of a two-stroke, which is long gone as well. You know, it's the way it is. I mean, I love the future. I mean, I think that even though, you know, I ain't going to see as much of it as you two, perhaps, but the fact being is that the future is fantastic. You know, it's not to be held back by dinosaur thinking. And that's what I love about it. You know, the improvements in technology are always going to continue, and so they should. The fact that maybe you don't like what doesn't suit me, the whine of an electric bike might turn some 10-year-old on in another 10 years' time. It is what it is. I still think that it's the racing that overarches everything. You know, if you've got great racing, you know, and then I think that you'll be fine. It'll be okay. And some of the racing in MotoE has actually been quite good. You know, slightly frightening from where I'm at, because, like I said, it's like an alien type thing. And knowing how heavy they are, and having spoken to some of the riders I respect that have never spoken out of tune with it, obviously, because either it's in their contract or they're they're usually descending riders that are quite grateful to get a job, thank you very much, and just get those last few paydays out of the career of racing motorbikes. So they're not going to say anything controversial, because at the end of the day, they're just cutting their nose off to spite their face. But the fact is that most of the people I've spoken to quietly, they're barges. They're low-tech suspension. I mean, even, again, going back to the first year, Öhlins just gave them a load of suspension units that they had on the shelf from donkey's years back. They weren't ones that were current at all, and they weren't serviced by Öhlins back then either. Öhlins wouldn't service them. They sold this package of suspension to Energica or whoever it was. I think it was Energica that was running it all at that time. And you had to sort out, and the spring on them, honestly, I could have balanced my house on the spring. It was so,
I mean, I think all these points are fairly accurate. It is so, there's lots. It's always going to divide opinion. And one thing I will just sort of mention as well, Pete, either of you want to come in just on the back of this as well? We mentioned it briefly. Is electric actually the future, or is it just getting us somewhere else before potentially MotoGP then starts to adopt it? And Nigel's picked up on this, and one thing he would like to put out there is what is the future of artificial fuels. And I should have probably known this already, doing some work for Porsche myself, but Porsche are trialling within their own one-make racing series a new sort of e-fuel, which is a mixture of hydrogen and captured carbon dioxide. And they're doing that in races this year. They don't believe in the future of it being electric, personally. They believe that it's actually this hydrogen sort of hybrid e-fuel. So could that be something we then start to see in these combustion engines and sort of Moto-E kind of, I don't want to say dissipate, but then that sort of, they trial it out and then it goes to MotoGP?
It all comes down to politics, doesn't it, Peter? At the end of the day,
everything
it all comes down to who is sponsoring this, who are the big movers and players in the producers of the power source. At the moment you've got Aramco, who we've talked about somewhat controversially, I think, with Saudi Arabia. They're involved in Formula One massively. They're involved now with the VR46. They're involved on trackside anyway at MotoGP. It comes down to politics, but I just think technology didn't peak out on two strokes. We could still have two strokes being driven by the stuff you've just talked about. What was it? Carbon dioxide recapture.
Yeah, it was very complicated science and stuff.
Are we all going to fit a pipe to our? We're going to fit a pipe to our backsides in the future.
Might be a bit more advanced than that.
Or not. You just don't know. We've got to have a herd of cows in our gardens to make our cars go. I'm being silly, of course, and a little bit flippant.
I think it's entirely possible,
I mean,
as you say, that basically there will be different solutions. Just as we had 2 strokes and 4 strokes, maybe electric will work great for things like scooters and e-bikes. The e-bikes are really popular, aren't they?
Yeah.
But maybe, the MotoGP tech guys at the top, they seem to be very doubtful about electric for the top performance vehicles at the moment. And so maybe that will need a different solution. There's no perfect power source, is there? I mean, if we discovered oil, gas, everything today, and we had no history of it, and someone said, right, make a motor, turn that energy into movement, and someone said, all right, I'm going to get a piston in a barrel, I'm going to ignite it, and I'm going to fire it like a bullet in a gun. Okay, great. Yep, you've got the movement. Then what are you going to do? I'm going to stop it, and I'm going to send it back up to where it just came. People would be like, what are you doing? But it's something that's been made to work by these geniuses that have, taken this concept and just refined it, and made it more efficient. But there's no perfect solution. I mean, it's far from 100% efficient. I think even the best combustion engines, internal combustion engines, are less than 50%. I think so. There's loads of potential. There's new technology coming in, as you say. I think that we will see a mix of different kinds of alternative energy for different solutions, different things. I mean, I like off-road motorbiking, enduro, that kind of thing. The lack of noise in that would be fantastic, because so many motocross tracks are closing down. You get complaints about the noise. So in that way, it'd be great. And also, it's not a flat-out thing, which is where electric batteries, they hate that. They hate just being, the big long straights, they tell us in MotoGP, are what really hurt the Moto-E bikes, the capacity of them, because it's just maximum power along, say, a Mugello or something, just makes that heat and it just kills the range on them. So, I think we could well end up, as you're saying, Harry, where you have a different range of solutions for different things. I don't think there'll be one winner.
As long as I've not got a pedal, Harry. Although, having said that, Triumph do a really good push bike now that's electric.
Do they? Are you sponsored by them for this week's show, by any chance? Or
No, this is one I stole out of their apparel shop when we had the broadcast from Triumph. There is no paid situation here with Triumph.
No hashtag ad or hashtag spawn, whether the influencers are doing. Well, gentlemen, I think we will leave it there for the moment as well, because I don't think you're right. There is no current easy answer, easy solution, but it's interesting to watch it develop, isn't it, and watch it progress and see where it can go from. Keith?
One thing, Harry, is that in future our computer that's in front of us will have this little pipe, and all the hot air that we've got should be able to drive our houses.
Oh, man.
Especially you, Harry.
You make a living from it, though.
Congratulations, by the way, on Formula. Congratulations. Not only did I watch a Formula 3 race, which on this, you wouldn't be able to drag me with wild horses to watch a Formula 3 race. I actually watched it and listened to Harry doing his commentary for the first time ever on F3. And I know how hard it is to do a new class. So, not a bad job, me old mate.
Thank you very much. That means a great deal. And to watch Formula 3, and actually it was quite entertaining. It might be even more entertaining than Formula 1, I think some people were saying. But if we get you to watch another one, then I'm out the window already. Well, look, Keith Huewen, Pete McLaren, thank you very much indeed. Once again, the debate will continue, I'm sure, on and off throughout the season. Let us know your thoughts after hearing all of that. Have you been persuaded to join in with this electric revolution, or are you absolutely convinced MotoE and electric mobility is not the future? It's something else. Get in touch in all the usual ways on the Crash MotoGP socials. We shall return with you this time next week for more MotoGP chat, but you can, of course, keep up to date with all the very latest on crash.net. Any questions, you know what to do by now. Send them our way through social media. Leave us a review wherever you get your podcast. Also, keep sending in your championship top 3 predictions. We're seeing them, we're collating them, and just before the summer break finishes, we'll go through them all and see what's leading the way in all of that, and we'll come back to you on that. But at the end of the day, we shall leave it there, gents, and we will see you right back here next week. Thanks for joining. Bye-bye.